go with this one, right? Oh, this one did pretty good for this guy. 5.6 views. Okay. Let's watch this one.
Spoke of Neuvillettes, I did battle with what felt like 1,000 Zhongli and Raiden A mains just to arrive to the same conclusion of the video, which is that Neuvillette is stronger than all the Archons.
Yes,
and as such,
that is
it
without
was
question.
necessary to judge them. But what exactly is he judging them for? Really think about this question, because it isn't...
Preemptively pausing so that I can give my own opinion. To my understanding so far, without watching the video, is that the reason why Neuvillette wants to judge the Archons is because, in a way, they kind of just accepted power from the heavenly principles, which was their stolen power, the power of the primordial dragons, right? So technically, they took that power, they didn't fight back against it, didn't give it back to the correct owner, and they kept it for thousands of years. I almost said millions, but that wouldn't be correct. They kept it for thousands of years. That is my understanding of why Neuvillette wants to judge them.
As simple as it appears, and it doesn't help that Neuvillette's attitude on the subject seems to change at any given moment, but I could be wrong here, and I'll tell you why. When Neuvillette first spoke of judging the usurpers, he says this.
Yes. Okay. So, just to give a little bit, my understanding is not too deep, but I will give you a little bit of an overview so you can understand the video. So, all of the Archons have this chess piece inside of them. It is something that elevates their elemental abilities, and it was given to them as well as a throne. Like you, throne, and that throne and that chess piece are signs of them coming to power through Celestia. Those thrones that each of these Archons took over were actually, I believe, thrones that belonged to the primordial dragons. The power inside of the throne belonged to them. They were the original inhabitants and rulers of this planet, these ancient dragons. And the heavenly principles came, stole the dragon's power, created humanity, or they might not have been the ones to create humanity, but and then they gave that power that they stole away to the Archons. And this guy on the screen right now, his name is Neuvillette. He's around 500 years old, and he is one of those dragons. He didn't have his power at the start of the story quest, but he was still one of these dragons. The dragons had the power stolen, but they were still alive. There's 2 cases in the story right now of these dragons that we've met that we are 100% sure of, perhaps a third. Or perhaps even a 4th. I guess it really depends on where your theory is. But those dragons were the original people who owned the power. It was given away. And these Archons kind of took that power and ruled over the nations that... I mean, if you want to equate it to something, it's like people coming over into the North American area, stealing the home from the Indians and killing them, and then taking their land. And then just not ever giving anything back.
The time that I have spent living among the citizens of Fontaine and traveling with you
has
transformed my views. Even though before this I had pardoned the sins of humanity long ago, I can promise you that my future judgments will not cause any harm to the common folk.
Like Portugal did with Brazil? Oh, forgive my ignorance. I actually don't know anything about that. That's a thing? Keep in mind that I am someone with a very typical level of NA education. I don't know a lot about anything other than North America, and even then, I don't know a lot about North America either. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Usurpers have yet to be settled. They owe a debt of blood that shall not be forgotten.
Guys, a debt of blood?
He is like, he is strong. He feels about that.
Treading the path of Malcolm X here than we are of MLK. You know, I think Thor said something similar to this to Kratos after he blasted that nigga into the stratosphere.
About time.
Damn.
I've been waiting
tradition called blood payments. It means I get a piece of you for what you took from my family.
I mean, historically, a debt of blood was most used during feudal times, and it was quite simply, you kills or harm
I
something.
mean, he is like,
so
you know,
I'm taking something from you, and more often than not,
their life.
This would then spark a never-ending cycle of vengeance-soaked violence that wouldn't ever really end. So by using the phrase debts of blood, you can see the seriousness behind the words of Neuvillette. He's seeking retribution as a survivor of the dragon race. So from this point of view, he's not so much judging them as he is passing down a judgment. Their culpability has long since been established as the evidence is all around us.
That is
However,
very true.
So far as we know, the Archons had nothing to do with this. Well, yes, I suppose
Yeah,
they played privy to
that's
the
where I'm
system by
thinking
receiving
too.
the stolen authority of the elements. They never actually vanquished the Archons as the book puts it. So here's what I think. When Neuvillette uses the term usurpers, it's all-encompassing, used to refer to anyone that contributes to the system set up by the heavenly principles.
Oh, that is not what I was thinking he meant by that. I really thought he was just speaking of the heavenly principles. But I guess that explains, if he thinks that they're essentially the same thing, of course he would want to judge the Archons as well for their culpability. But still, that's like, I don't know. Hopefully this guy explains why he thinks Neuvillette thinks that way.
They play a willing role in a system that was built on the usurping of the dragon race, of which we know some of the sovereigns died fighting against. However, when Neuvillette uses the term debts of blood, I believe who he's actually referring to are the gods that fought against his kin. That being the Four Shades and the primordial god hailing from beyond the stars.
That was dramatic. Rightfully dramatic. Okay, so I don't actually know a lot about that section of the lore. That one's very, like, you gotta dig deep for that one. That one's not really in the story yet so much as it's in the stories that are in the story. And I only know what I know from the videos from Ashkai, who is obviously like an amazing Genshin creator. But to my understanding, like those are some motherfuckers. Like those are people you don't want to fuck with.
When he claims it's his final destiny to do so, it's these 5 individuals that precipitated the vanquishing of the sovereigns, killed his Dragon King, brought ruin to the world they stole, wiped out countless nations with these meaningless prophecies, wreaks havoc on humanity in an attempt to save it. And their greatest sin? Throwing the beings they created and cherished into an open-air prison where they must be content to exist, but not to live.
On Fortnite. I would help the dragons. I would try my best to help the dragons as well. Not just because Neuvillette is daddy either, but for other reasons as well.
You must be willing to step up and right those wrongs. If you cannot break free from the eggshell,
look at him, he's so beautiful.
Not but a prison where you are blinded and confined. Do not be afraid of bleak desolation and poverty outside the prison, and do not fret about your stable rations being cut off once the prison is destroyed. Outside that world, I will always be waiting for you.
That sounded very solemn.
I'm still Celestia's #1 supporter, and I could easily refute all these claims. Easily. But,
wait, what? Is this guy actually real for that? We might have to watch more of his videos.
But blood debts aside, Neuvillette has made it clear he is absolutely not against using force against the Archons should it come to that. But again, what's he judging them for? Receiving stolen goods? It can't be as black and white as that, and we know this based on his comments of Venti.
I shall fulfill my vow.
Okay, wait, before we reach this part, I feel like it's not fair, right? We're kind of getting into probably why he thinks Neuvillette thinks this way, but like it's really not fair because we already saw what it took for Focalors to destroy the throne and give Neuvillette back his abilities. It took over 500 years of collecting energy in order for that to occur. You can't really like expect the Archons all to do this while it's also doing their own thing. The only reason Focalors was able to do it at all is because she had nothing but the ability to do it because she wasn't actually acting as an Archon at the time. She was just hiding away and collecting energy, doing nothing else but collecting that energy. So it's like you can't expect them to just be able to hand the power over. It's not possible. That's not something that they can do.
To judge all of the 7 in turn, even if the sky should fall and the ground give way. As the recipient of the authority of Animo, the god of breeze and hope must also stand trial.
Although I've never heard of Venti being described as this, the god of breeze and hope. I don't know if they ever put that anywhere else. This is a nice little bit of Venti lore that I really like. Usually he's only referred to as the god of freedom, but he's referred to here as breeze and hope. That's even more interesting than freedom, to be honest. Freedom is like very K-Kona, very America, but hope is like deeper than that, you know?
He spends most of his time being a harmless drunkard. Well, even so, I must meet him for myself and proceed from there.
Neuvillette's reaction
Yes,
to Venti is
and I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it emphatically. I'm gonna say it with my chest. Venti is my favorite character. He's well designed. If he didn't have that cape on, he's the best twink in the game, in the best of ways. Like, I love his hair. I even like his hat. I love his character. He's very mischievous. He definitely has a lot of lore going on around him. Like, he's gonna tie back in with the story in a bunch of ways. I have lots of, like, personal thoughts and, like, headcanons for him. But I mean, he wears a fucking corset. Like, he's for the girls, you know?
interesting. It tells us a lot. He was caught completely off guard by the fact that the Animo Archon is a harmless drunkard. He then sighs and says, even so, I must meet him for myself and proceed from there. It almost sounds like judging Venti has lost all meaning for him. And if that's the case, then I think it's a pretty safe guess that what he's judging the Archons for is their use of the stolen elemental authorities. He wants to judge how his kin's powers are being used.
Oh,
It doesn't seem
interesting.
like he's indicating he wants to take it back, like I previously assumed. Despite being a sovereign, Neuvillette cares for humanity. I mean, thanks to Thosalors, he even wound up forgiving their sins. So with that being the case, it would make sense that he'd like to ensure his race's powers are not being used to harm the common folk or for other nefarious intent. These 7 Archons won their authorities, and he wants to see how they're being used. So with that said, it's time to judge some fucking Archons.
Yes,
The Animo
sir.
Archon Barbados, also known as the God of Breeze and Hope.
Didn't realize that was a thing.
7 who participated in the Archon War has long since left his people. But not out of apathy, but for love. His refusal to rule over the people of Mondstadt has not only left him virtually powerless, but also helped to establish
Bullshit in my opinion, but okay.
freedom. Barbados would only directly intervene.
Okay, for the non-knowers, my opinion on Venti, in general, Venti is the one who tells us that Archons gain power by how their people perceive them, in that the stronger you rule over your people, the more power you get as a god. Venti is referred to as, by many, the god of freedom, and Mondstadt is the city of freedom. So he doesn't take active part in ruling this city at all. In fact, he naps for thousands of years at a time and only awakens when the city's in trouble and needs him. However, this is, to this date, still the only city that actually has a church that praises their god. All other gods do not get praised. They don't get worshipped. Venti gets worshipped. There is simply no way that is less impactful than actually ruling with an iron fist in fear. It has to be that they're the same. That is my personal takeaway so far. And I know that, like, a lot of people kind of agree with that. Like, I'm not the only one who feels that way.
Mondstadt's state of affairs twice.
But yeah, out of what, 5 nations, none of them have churches. Except for this motherfucker.
And the second was to summon Dvalin to protect Mondstadt from the Black Dragon during the Cataclysm. As such, I believe the Animo Archon to be found not guilty. The Geo-Archon Morax, also known as the God of History, is also one of the 7 who fought in the original Archon War.
I thought he was the god of contracts. See, I'm getting more titles here.
His rule, I mean, mean, at one point, it seemed like he was a hands-on god, but then, like, devolved into a I appear once a year god, and then just decided to retire. I mean, he didn't harm people,
I don't blame him.
only decided to
I would want to
retire
retire
because he
too.
felt they were self-sufficient enough.
Oh my god, she's so hot.
Defeat an ancient god. I mean, had they failed, of course, he would have stepped in, so it's not like he just threw him into the deep end and just went, swim, nigga! As such, I guess the god of gold is to be found not guilty? I don't know. Now, moving right along to the Electro.
Oh, she guilty.
Also
She is guilty. Throw her away. I'm sorry. I have very strong opinions about what she did. It's not forgivable. She didn't have enough of a redemption arc, right? What she did to her people was fucked. It was so fucked.
While one of the gods who fought in the Archon War, she would not ascend to the position of Archon.
Okay, so what happened? So around 500 years ago, there was a cataclysm. So it was talked about in one of the other videos, right? In that cataclysm, there was essentially a mass genocide. You know how, like, earlier I was like, oh, it would be so easy to genocide the Melazines. Well, essentially they did that to an entire nation of human people who did not believe in God. They killed atheists, essentially. They were told to do this, presumably by Celestia, and all of the Archons, maybe not all of them. Like I said, I think that Venti was doing something else lore-wise at the time, but most of them took place in this genocide. They were ordered to. There's nothing much you can really do there. Like, your boss tells you to kill someone, I guess you kind of just have to do it, right? And during that time, she and her sister, Electromommy, she and her twin sister were both fighting. They shared Archonhood at the time. They were two Archons. And her twin sister died in this battle. And once that happened, she became obsessed with the idea of not dying, to the point where eventually she ended up making very strong borders for her island country and not allowing anyone in or out. And she ended up doing something called the Seppuku degree, I believe, something along those lines. And what she did was she essentially terrorized her own people and took their visions. Visions are like the elemental power thing that you see some of these characters having, the little like the charm thing. And if you take those away, those are given because of the user having such a strong ambition that they were granted power from the gods, right? Not specifically the gods like the ones we're talking about now, but the celestial gods. And if you take away those visions, they become listless. They want to die. A lot of them ended up committing suicide, I believe, because of this, right? And she collected them all and put them on a statue in the middle of the biggest city that there is in the entire nation on display. And she did this so that no one would act against her, because she took their ability, first off, and then took their ambitions itself so that no one would be able to act against her. So essentially, like, what she did was super fucked, right? She caused people to kill themselves. I'm sure. I remember it being implied, but a lot of people also went to war, like civil war, trying to get this to stop. There was definitely casualties there, like probably a lot of them. So like she in my eyes, if he doesn't rule her to be guilty, that will be incredibly disappointing for me.
One of the gods who fought in the Archon War,
that is
she
crazy.
would not ascend to the position of Archonhood, but rather her twin did. A willingly sacrificed her body to make it happen.
Okay, so I was a little bit incorrect here. I thought that they shared the ability of Archon, I guess. But I mean, my point still stands. The rest of it should be correct.
Makoto would be the best. Why the fuck did I just say her? A willingly sacrificed her body, thinking Makoto would be the best fit Archon. Once Makoto became an Archon, she remade A's body and let her serve as her Kage Musha. Makoto would later die during the Cataclysm, leaving A to act as the Archon. Something that would prove to be an interesting decision.
A bad decision, I think you mean.
The Archon destroyed her body once more, made a puppet, put her mind into a sword, placed herself into the plane of Euthymia, also sealing herself away from all earthly responsibilities. This wound up in the inevitable corruption of the puppet, who would then enact the Vision Hunt Decree.
Okay, so in a way, I don't want to say, this does not change my opinion, but I guess technically she's only secondhand culpable, because she did not have full control of her body at the time. That I do not think changes my opinion by very much. She is still completely culpable for everything that happened here.
People of their visions, personally, mind you, making a whole fucking spectacle of this shit.
Yep, that's the statue I was talking about right there.
Gathering around to watch an execution. Yeah, he's about to get his vision snatched. Anyway, people who lost their vision during the hunt essentially became lobotomized versions of themselves, losing all their drive, ambition, and even some of their memories. This decree would then spark a civil war in Inazuma that would only end after the Traveler and Miko intervened. And keep in mind, this all happened with her not only being aware, but agreeing with it.
Yeah, she was aware and did agree. See?
I am quite well informed about the Vision Hunt decree. Not so. Only everything that pertains to eternity. The Vision Hunt decree has my tacit approval.
Yeah, okay, bitch.
Do not constitute a threat to eternity. Otherwise, they would have been purged long ago. Individual ambition is inherently incompatible with eternity.
Okay. See what I mean? She agrees with it. She is completely culpable.
Far more to lose by chasing their dreams. Consider this. No one will lose.
She was like, fuck your dreams. Be a lifeless moron. And you're better off that way.
Lost their lives are the ones who insisted on pursuing their own aspirations.
So you can pursue your own aspirations, but normal people can't?
Guilty. As soon as Neuvillette hears this horse shit, he's smiting this bitch.
Yes, and I will be here for it. She is still Electro Mommy, though.
Bro, he didn't. Not guilty.
Not guilty at all, yeah.
Current Archons aside, there is one Archon in particular I did want to bring up. The Cryo Archon, also known as the God of Love, because there is one little known fact we know about her thanks to Dainsleif.
She is a god with no love left for her people, nor do they have any left for her.
She would be an interesting one for Neuvillette to judge, I feel like.
Her rebellion against the divine comes at last.
She is a god with no love left for her people. I'd be interested in seeing the people's living conditions in Snezhnaya, and am curious to see if she has cast them aside in pursuit of her rebellion, because it sounds like something has happened to cause great disdain between the people of Snezhnaya and the Cryo Archon, but the question is, what? Given the state...
Obviously, that was a good video. I like his videos so far. I'm kind of surprised he has only this many subscribers. His ideas are all seemingly very thought out. And they're kind of like short and digestible videos as well, as opposed to like Ashley, who her videos are like definitely a lot longer and a lot less easily digestible. Although they are still obviously amazing. I do kind of like this more like short lore, like here are my thoughts, here's what like I feel like might happen, like what his opinions are. Like, that kind of thing is very good. Now back to Ruby.